Hey everyone and welcome. Today, we're cracking open one of the most fundamental and, honestly, most powerful parts of Python. We are talking all about strings.
I mean, just think about it for a second. The username you used to log into an app today, that search query you typed into your browser, even the words you're reading right now. Text is literally everywhere. But how does a computer, a machine that really only thinks in ones and zeros, actually make sense of all this human language?
Well, in the world of programming, the answer to that big question is something called a string. And it sounds fancy, but it's actually pretty simple. A string is just a sequence of characters, letters, numbers, symbols, whatever, that the computer agrees to treat as one single thing.
So how does Python handle this? Well, here's the best way to think about it. A Python string isn't just a boring container for text. It's more like an essential toolbox, and it is packed with all sorts of cool gadgets for taking text apart, putting it together, cleaning it up, and figuring out what it means.
So, today we're going to take a full tour of that toolbox. First, we'll cover the basics of what a string even is. Then, we'll pull out our inspection tools to see how we can measure them. After that, it's time for some construction. We'll combine and repeat strings. Then we'll get into the finishing tools for transforming and cleaning things up. And finally, we'll look at the really cool tools for taking strings apart and putting them back together. Let's dive in.
All right, first up, what exactly is a Python string? This is really the foundation of our entire toolbox.
One of the great things about Python is that it's super flexible right from the get-go. You can create a string using single quotes or you can use double quotes. Python doesn't care, it treats them the exact same way. That's really handy if your text itself has an apostrophe or a quotation mark in it. And for bigger things, like a poem or a long message, you can use triple quotes to make a string that spans multiple lines. See? Simple.
Okay, so now we know how to create a string. But how do we look inside of it? It's time to open up that toolbox and grab our inspection tools so we can measure and analyze what we've just made.
Python gives us some fantastic built-in functions to start with. Len is probably the one you'll use most. It's short for length, and it just tells you how many characters are in the string. Easy. Now, min and max are pretty interesting. They find the smallest and largest characters based on their standard character order. So for our example, Python, H comes before P, and Y is the furthest along in the alphabet.
Now listen up, because this next concept is absolutely crucial, not just in Python, but in a ton of other programming languages. It's this idea that counting starts from zero. We call it zero-based indexing, and it's the key to grabbing individual characters out of a string.
So, if you have a string, the very first character isn't at position 1, it's at index 0. The second character is at index 1. The third is at index 2, and it just keeps going like that. If you want a specific character, you just ask for it by its index number. But what if you need the last character of a string, and you have no idea how long that string is? Well, Python has this really clever and elegant solution. You can count backwards from the end using negative numbers.
The very last character of any string, it doesn't matter how long it is always at index -1. The second to last is at -2, and so on. This is an incredibly useful shortcut that saves you from having to figure out the length of the string first.
Okay, we've inspected our strings. Now, let's start building stuff with them. Time to pull out the construction tools from our toolbox.
But first, there's one critical rule you have to know. In Python, we say that strings are immutable. That word, immutable, is just a fancy way of saying unchangeable. Once you create a string, you can't actually go back and alter that specific string. Anytime you change it, like adding text, what you're really doing is creating a brand new string from scratch. So keeping that in mind, how do we build? Well, we have two main tools. The plus sign isn't for math here. For strings, it's for something called concatenation. It just glues two strings together. Then we have the asterisk, or the star symbol. That's for repetition. You can take a string and repeat it as many times as you want, and it'll create a new, much longer string for you.
All right, we've built some strings. Now for the really fun part, the finishing tools. This is where we get to transform, polish, and clean up our text.
You see, Python strings come loaded with these specialized tools called methods. For example, if you need to make sure all your text is consistent, you can use .upper. Just tack it onto the end of your string and boom, every single letter is now uppercase.
What if you need to swap out a word, or even just a single character? The .replace method is your go-to tool. You just tell it what to find, the old part, and what to replace it with, the new part. It's perfect for any kind of find and replace job.
Oh, and this one is an absolute lifesaver. You ever get data from a user or from a file, and it's got all these extra spaces at the beginning or the end? The dot strip method cleans that mess right up, getting rid of any of that unwanted white space. It is perfect for tidying up messy input.
And for our final set of tools, we've got assembly and disassembly. How do we break our strings apart into smaller pieces and then put them back together in brand new ways?
For this, we have split and join, and they're like two sides of the same coin, perfect opposites that work together. You can take a sentence, like Python is powerful, and use split to break it apart at the spaces. That turns it into a list of individual words. Then you can take that list and use join to glue it all back together into a single string, using any character you want as the glue. In this case, we're using a hyphen.
So as you can see, Python doesn't just give you a way to store text. It hands you a complete, versatile, and really powerful toolbox that lets you inspect, build, clean, and reassemble text in pretty much any way you can possibly imagine.
Whether you're analyzing data, building a website, or creating a game, working with text is at the heart of almost everything. So I'll just leave you with this one question. Now that you have this amazing toolbox, what are you going to build?